Hey guys, Saf here with another Raid Shadow Legends video, and we are doing a champion guide today on a new Void Epic that was recently a guaranteed Void Epic, Akemtum. Now, for 40 Voids, you got this Skinwalker, Poisoner slash Hexer slash debuff spreader type champion, and his kit is actually very unique and interesting. However, for 40 Voids, it is quite a lot of investment. So in this video, we're going to give a bit of a breakdown in terms of how his kit works, going into detail in some of the behind the scenes things to understand exactly how it's coded. And then we're going to do a bit of a play test in different areas to show where he really shines. And I think actually on paper, he looked a bit confusing. In reality, he's actually quite a very strong champion. Not necessarily sure I would say he's worth 40 Voids, but then I don't know if there are many Void Epics that I would qualify as worth 40 Voids, even when we're talking about Seer, just because the Void pool is a lot smaller, so over time you will eventually pick up those champions. But I do hear tales of people saying, I've pulled Voids for 2 years and I still don't have a Man-Eater, I still don't have a Demyther, so it's potentially a problem. So, Akemtum, he is a Skinwalker attack-based Void Epic. What does he do? He has an A1, he attacks 3 times. Each hit has a 40%, which goes up to 50% chance when booked, of placing a poison debuff for 2 turns. If the target is under hex debuff, each hit has a 40% chance of applying a debuff spread effect, taking 1 random enemy debuff from the target and placing it on all enemies. And when I first read this, I thought the enemy that received the debuff also had to be hexed, but it's not the case. As long as you have a single target hex out there on one enemy, whatever debuff exists on that hex target can be spread to all other enemies. And we are talking, you know, you could spread HP burn onto poison cloud heads that don't have HP burn. It is very powerful. He's also a triple hit A1 poison with a 50% chance per hit. It certainly puts him in the pool of the best epic poisoner in the game. It probably puts him up there in competition with the Frozen Banshee as well, as it doesn't require as many conditions and setup. And obviously, there's legendary champions. Like I think the best legendary poison is probably Netheril. Gnishak obviously can do a lot of poisons, but it's all conditional on bombs. If we're just talking raw A1 poison potential, Netheril is normally the benchmark. He's up there. He's equal to what Netheril can do as a Void Epic. Now, obviously, his kit requires Hex, and on the A2, he attacks 3 times again. So you will 100% want to use Giant Slayer on this target. So you will 100% want to use Giant Slayer on this champion. He attacks all enemies 3 times. Each hit has a 60% chance of increasing the duration of any Hex debuffs on the enemy by 1 turn. If enemies are not under a Hex debuff, he instead has a chance of placing it. Now, the way that this is going to work is if I attack on the first attack and I place the Hex debuff, then the subsequent second and third attack has a chance to extend that debuff. So you could place it for 2 turns and then end up after the ability having a 4-turn cooldown Hex. Now, as this goes to a 3-turn cooldown when you book it up, he pretty much can guarantee that this Hex debuff never falls off. It's always available, which is very useful in places like Hydra. Very useful if you're using champions who reliably depend upon Hex. We're talking like Ruel. We're talking the other champions that utilize or make use of Hex. There's Marinix. There's lots of different combos. In this video, I'm mainly going to focus on the champion, not the combinations, but we might do a follow-up video in terms of looking at what kind of Hex champions pair well with each other and what you can do to have some fun. So he only has 2 active abilities, so Reflex Set seems like quite a good option. If you're using him in Clan Boss, I would say probably you don't ever use this A2, because Hex won't do anything in Clan Boss unless there is a partner in your Clan Boss team that requires Hex. Otherwise, you should just stick to the A1 and just pump out as many poisons as you can. If anything, he kind of pumps out too many poisons. What makes this champion more interesting is his passive. He has a 80% chance of inflicting damage from 1 poison debuff to enemies under a Hex debuff whenever their allies receive damage from poison debuffs, and it books to 100%. What's different compared to the A1 here is you need the Hex out there in order to do splash damage. So if an enemy, say like you've got 5 enemies out there, enemy 1 takes damage from any number of poisons, 1 poison damage, it takes the value of that damage and it spreads it to any hexed target. Just the 1 poison. Now, this is also transferred as a fixed damage, but it's not transferred as poison damage. So enemies that are immune to poison will receive damage from this Hex Blood. It's changed, similar to the way that Poison Exploders changed the damage from poison to enemy max HP. He is changing poison damage to on-hit damage. Standard, if I use an ability to do damage, that's the type of damage I deal. It will ignore 100% of the target's defense. It is fixed damage, so it cannot crit. It won't be on the -10 to +10% range. So it should mean if I deal 50,000 damage to enemy 1, enemy 2, 3, 4, and 5 will receive 50,000 damage. That is the way that it's coded. We also get an 18% ally speed in all battles. There's not that many all battle speed in the game that is actually useful for places like Clan Boss. So it's actually good that we get a poisoner with an 18% aura. Aura is really, really handy for trying to get some of those speed downs in Clan Boss teams. You can do a lot with that aura there. It's all battle, so if you pull this early game, mid game, you get yourself quite a good dungeon carry here. In terms of base stats, we've got very good base HP. We've got 1.3k attack, which is on the lower scale. It does triple hit. And we've got a base speed of 98 with a base defense, which is 881. So you're going to have to lift his defense up if you need to use him in a scenario where he's going to die, sort of high-end Hydra. So let's take a look at how I've built him to begin with. So he's actually quite a technical champion to build in a sense, because you sometimes want the A2, which means you would want reflex because there's only 2 active abilities. So you could probably get this on like almost always up. But then you also lose the poisons and the debuff spreading. So sometimes you actually don't really care about the A2. You just want the A1. So I've actually got him in a retaliation set at the moment, which means we could get maximum potential from its A1. Let's go and do a bit of play testing around the different passives. I haven't got him booked yet because I'm waiting for clan versus clan. It's a personal this week. In terms of a blessing, I did pick up a 1-star soul, and I've actually put Heaven Cast on him because I value his A1 more than his A2. There are other champions such as Mithrala I could use to get the Hex out if I need to. But being able to reduce his accuracy requirement makes it easier to build him, and once we get up to the full mount, we're still getting the damage components, but we could get 40% less of accuracy requirement on his A1, which is where all of his power exists. As power exists in placing poisons, spreading debuffs, and then activating it on the passive. The Hex is a coincident of that, but not necessarily an essential part of it. You don't necessarily even enable this. In Clan Boss, you will never enable this ability. You will never need to. And in certain situations where you've got Mithrala, you will never use this ability either because she can sustain that Hex debuff pretty comfortably. So I'm going to just take him into the Doom Tower here. We're going to just run him up to, say, stage 85 here. We're going to run a basic team here of Nekmothar, Duchess, Riho Bone Spear, which is one of the best single target debuffers in the game, and Akemtum with Venomage here. And Venomage is just going to activate poisons to activate his passives. So the goal here is we just want to test a few components out and see how they actually work in the battle. Now, obviously, we've got to rely on the fact that his passive is not booked, and that I'm bringing some OP champions in terms of Nekmo and Riho just to test the component here. So we've got some basic debuffs out. We're just going to pick on this back Frozen Banshee here. Now, obviously, we've got some debuffs out. We need to hex people out here. So if we slow this down, we can see pretty much what debuffs have we got out? We've got decreased defense, decreased attack, and leech on this target, decreased speed on everyone, decreased attack on everyone. So the things we can spread are the HP burn, the decreased crit rate, and the weaken. And also Hex. We could spread Hex on to other targets as well. So watch as he goes in here. My one target has now made the decreased crit rate, the weaken, available on every target. If you've got like a single target Jintoro, you can spread decreased defense and weaken to pretty much everyone in the team here. It's quite powerful. Let's just cycle back through. We've got it again. Let's just go and pick a Hex target. Remember, you've got to attack a Hex target to spread debuffs. And now we're going to have a look at some of these poison activations. So we want to find a target that's got a poison because Venomage activates poisons. Each has a 35% chance of activating up to 2 poisons. So we've got 1, 2 on this little Frozen Banshee here. We've got 1, 2 on that one, and we've got 1, 2 on here. So we'll do this 2-turn cooldown here. We're going to slow it down. You'll see the splash damage go on everyone here. 2,000, 8,000, 2,000, 8,000. There's not substantial numbers here because these are not bosses, right? They're high HP targets, but effectively, if you were using a poison booster or any sort of poison damage to clear waves, then it's going to be very strong. We actually don't even have enough space here to put any more debuffs out from Riho. And you can just see how he is basically pushing debuffs everywhere. I'd say he's average build. My retaliation gear is not great at all. He's not getting attacked at the moment, so you don't see the value of the set. So that's his playtest there on his actual base kit. So now that Hydra's unlocked this week, we can do a bit of a test as well on Hydra. So all I've done here is I brought in Mithrala instead for my Hex champion. We're going to use Riho for debuffs, and we're just going to boost some turn meter here. We're going to use a Seeker to make sure we can provoke the head, and we're going to throw in Elva for some buffs ourselves to make sure we can actually test this thoroughly. What I want to show here is how easy and how quickly you can convert single target debuffers in a place like Hydra into a AoE debuffer. It's very powerful. So we've now burnt that first head, we've provoked it. We're going to see if we can actually spread some debuffs and actually remove the poison cloud problem from our issue list here. So we're going to go over here, we're going to spread. There we go. That is the impact we are looking for. We have now got HP burn on every head, which means we have removed the problem of poison cloud. This champion is insane for that job. Now, obviously, we've kind of gone crazy with the whole buffs and debuffs and poisons. You got to be careful he won't overfill the poison bar, especially on a provoke head. But for this situation here where we were looking like we were going to be in deep trouble, we're now not in that situation. Again, we can reburn using the reho. Any single target debuff champion is now viable to use if you have an Akemtum in your team, because he's just going to keep spreading debuffs. We can then target this guy again over here, spread some more debuffs, decrease attack, decrease defense is out on everyone now. Because it's a 3-hit, you can build him with 240 speed. At the moment, he's built like 168 speed, and just keep pumping his A1, and you are going to put so many debuffs out there that a lot of the problems you normally have in terms of block buffs. You know, Ugo is considered one of the best block buffs champions because she's AoE block buffs. Well, if it is now a single target block buff that is really reliable, you put Akemtum with them, you get some damage, you get Hex, and you also get lots of debuff spreading. You don't need to run the Mithrala here. You could run him and use his A2, put him in a reflex set so that he gets that reset back. You can see the Hex is on a 3-turn cooldown here. On all these targets so far. We've not reused Mithrala's A2. He's also got a counterattack. This is the value of retaliation. He's going to keep counterattacking and spreading debuffs. If you put him in retaliation, you'll spread a lot more debuffs. Killer head here, obviously normal is much easier to do these things on. I could cycle this for hours and hours, but essentially as a debuff spread option, Akemtum is probably the best debuff spread champion in this game. Now, some quirks to note when you're using certain unique effects, such as Geomancer's passive. We know Geomancer's passive, if a target is burnt by his burn, then they take damage equal to the amount of damage that they deal, and plus that 3% chance to do lots more bonus damage. That's how we know Geomancer's passive is very strong. He will spread Geomancer's burn, but he will not spread the damage reflect. Only the target that you actually place the Geomancer burn on will actually get his damage component. That being said, it's still pretty good to spread a single target burn of the value of Geomancer across all targets if you need to control those heads. That's the scenario where I'm talking about a single target burn is very, very valuable, but it's a single target burn. You don't get as much value out of it. So we got this A2 back here. Now you can see that the Hex has started to drop. We could just extend that Hex debuff 3 turns, 2 turns, 5 turns on that dead head. That's the example where a good example of this value of having a debuff spread option. I can convert my Geomancer's burn effect, not the damage effect, but the burn effect, into an AoE HP burn, which means I don't need to bring another burner. I potentially don't even need to bring a block buffs option if I can control the Mischief head, because burns will always be spreadable. They'll always be out there. That is a test in Hydra. I think he's very, very strong in Hydra. Let me know in the comments below what you think you can do with him in Hydra if you've pulled him. Now let's go and talk about how you can use him in maybe some speed done dungeons. So a common speed team that you see right now for a lot of the Krakens is double Theodore, double Calvalax, or Calvalax with a certain amount of Theodores. And that's because when you have Calvalax, you can basically, when you open a round, you place 4 poison debuffs on all enemies for 2 turns. And then when Theodore comes in, he has the option to either place them, or you can basically activate and boom. So some people will use place and then another Theodore to activate. Some people will just activate with double Calvalax. But that is how you would use it for the wave content. You basically would activate those poisons, and that's how you can get like 30-second dungeon runs. It's very, very strong. Now, the way that it works with Akemtum, Theodore is the only AoE poison activator. And as we've mentioned with Akemtum's passive, when one enemy takes damage from any poison, one of those poison damage reflects onto every single Hex target. So in an AoE setting, and I've had a few people test this who have Akemtum and Theodore, so what it effectively means is enemy 1 will activate this passive when an activation takes place. But because Theodore's AoE, he will do an activation on every single enemy. So enemy 1 will spread it to enemy 2, 3, 4, 5. Enemy 2 activation will spread it to enemy 1, 3, 4, 5. Enemy 3 will activate it to 1, 2, 4, and 5, etc. So essentially, this passive is working exactly the same way that Calvalax passive works, because Calvalax will give you 4 poisons at the start of the turn. Now, when it comes to activations, duration of poison is less important than when you're doing an exploder. An exploder will take the quantity and duration of all poisons, convert it to enemy max HP, and then do damage. It's why you can't use Xavier against high stage bosses, because they cap enemy max HP damage at 10%. But for Theodore, who is just forcing the activation of a poison, forcing a tick, this effectively means that you could run Akemtum over Calvalax in wave content, specifically wave content, and you would get the same value as Calvalax's passive. Now, when you get to the boss, if the boss is a single target boss, obviously you don't have that value, but you could literally build a glass cannon Akemtum in your team, let him die on the boss, and then Theodore, with his own abilities, because he can obviously place poisons here, extend poisons here, could take over. Calvalax will still probably be a better option because he will place it on those single target bosses. However, if you don't have a Calvalax, but you have a Theodore and you want to try and speed up your dungeons and you've picked up that Akemtum, take a look and see if you can actually speed up the wave clearing, because you don't need to do A2 into A3. You only need a single poison on one enemy, and it's effectively giving that enemy 5 poisons. The one he activates, and then the ones spread from everyone else is 4. So 5 in total, and that might be enough to kill it. You don't know. That's the thing to look into. If you put 2 Akemtums, the passive is not locked. One Akemtum will activate, another Akemtum will activate. So 2 Akemtums together will activate that passive, meaning you can get double Calvalax as double Akemtum for wave content, and it will be the same thing. I can't test it because I don't have Theodore and I don't have Calvalax. The gods of Plarium have not graced me with their luck, but that is certainly a crazy area. So if you want speed running in dungeons, I think he's S tier if you have that Theodore. If not, then obviously he's going to be able to spread debuffs. If he was on my free-to-play, he would be going into my dungeon straight away, because the amount of debuffs he can spread will deal with a lot of the issues you have early game in terms of, I don't have an AoE decrease attack champion. Not a problem. Spread the debuffs. I don't have an AoE decrease defense champion. Not a problem. Spread the debuffs. You can see the value there. Now, in terms of clan boss, I think he is probably the best poisoner you could potentially use, outside of maybe a Frozen Banshee, who does it 100% on a poison sensitivity, because of the way that he operates. I've got him in my Mythwatchers team, which is, if you check my videos, you'll find a video covering the team. It uses Alva and Ruella to make a 3-1 combination. Now, this is a full auto team, but you will notice it's a bit of a problematic team here, because effectively I've got Alva with a toxic set, which normally you wouldn't have if you bring a poisoner in. But what you're going to find here is he's going to pump out so many poisons in a short space of time that you're actually going to overfill the debuff bar. So you wouldn't want to run any sort of toxic sets with him at all. You disable the A2 because you can't spread debuffs onto the same target, so the hex is irrelevant. But you'll see quite quickly, this falls into tune around about turn 4. That's when he's in a 3-1 ratio. He'll be able to do 3 A1s in the space of 1 clan boss turn. He's going to be filling the boss's debuff bar with poisons. He's already started kicking off. He's also in retaliation here, which means that he's going to counterattack. If you put him in triple revenge as well, you get more opportunities. The more he A1s, the more debuffs he spreads, the more poisons he places, the more dominant he becomes. You can see we're already up to 4 of his poisons. Obviously, Toxic Hex places a lesser poison. And you can see we're going to be into Speed Tune in a second. It does cause problems with Ruella's debuffs not being 100% guaranteed. He will, obviously, he's resisting a little bit there because I think I've dropped his accuracy a little bit. But we're already at full debuff bar. And again, you wouldn't run Toxic. I'm actually mitigating, I'm losing damage here because he can't now place any more poisons until those Toxic sets fall off. You could probably even run Akemtum completely unbooked with the value of his A1 because you won't use his A2. You don't need his passive here because you can't activate it. Whereas champions like Frozen Banshee, obviously it's a rare, it's fine, but it needs books. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to bring you back after a run has completed with this exact same team. I just wanted to show you the setup and the way that it was going to cause problems because we are just pumping far too many poisons out here. We've just put 3 out in a row there. Ruella cannot keep the debuffs up with the Toxic set and this guy. So let's jump back in at the end and I will show you exactly how much damage he has been able to do. We've just seen the example there where we've got too many poisons. So there you go. This is the run finished. You can see that I've done 113 million damage. Akemtum has done 34 million. Seeker's done 27 million. Seeker is a nuts champion in this current build. But you can see that Elva is taking a lot of his potential damage away from him. 17 million from Elva. Some of it will be Brimstone, granted. but not all of it will be Brimstone. A big chunk of that will be the toxic set she does, and that's probably about 4 million damage here. He could be doing an extra 8 million. So I really need to test this in a better clan boss team. I'm probably going to do a follow-up video on him in terms of how does he compare in the same team with a Frozen Banshee and a maybe a Nethril, because I do have a Nethril, in a traditional sort of a non-unkillable setting. This is my unkillable team. It's pretty broken. Something like a standard 2-1 team with like a Lydia and an ally protector. How does he compare in terms of damage output? I think he'll be near number 1. He's not even fully maxed out here. We haven't really got his methodical mastery done, because you have to go down a different mastery route to get to Giant Slayer, and I haven't finished the last 400 scrolls. So there's a potential here that he could go even higher in this number, but a great option for clan boss. 34 million, and it's in retaliation. Not a crazy gear set, not crazy damage. It's pretty average gear. So there you go, guys. That is Akemtum. As you said, he's not in a crazy build. 4.9k attack, 150% crit damage, 106 crit rate. That was the build I built from here just to test him out. He hasn't even got upgraded like rings or accessories. We had him in a standard mastery set for a Giant Slayer type clan boss champion. A bit of defense tree, a little bit of this. You could decide if you wanted to go down this route here, but keep in mind that the placement of the Hex and Poisons is the only value you gain out of Master Hexer and Sniper. The debuff spread is a different effect. It won't improve the chance of you spreading debuffs, that mastery. It only applies to actually applying debuffs, which would be the Poison and the Hex. I'm going to be booking him up during the clan versus clan personal. We're expecting it to be a personal clan versus clan on Tuesday. They tend to do it every other week. And then I'll be able to see fully and completely how strong he is. I may change his build up and take him out of retaliation, because I think it's potentially overkill when you're running on a 2-1 setting. And I do want to see how he compares in a more neutral setting against other poisoners. I hope that was of interest to you, and I hope I explained some of the mechanics in a little bit more detail if you did pull for him. Let me know in the comments below what your plans with Akemtum are if you have pulled for him, or if you think this champion is not as good as I think it is and I'm kind of just wasting my breath explaining to it. Let me know in the comments below. I love hearing from everyone in the community. Give this video a thumbs up if you have enjoyed the content, and if you want to see more champion guides, please consider subscribing to the channel. I probably will start doing polls on what kind of champion guides people want. We have just started a Discord that you can get involved with if you're a paying member of the live stream, that the YouTube memberships. We do stream on Monday and Thursdays. There's a special space for all my HH minions that can hang out and we can talk about the game. But I'll put a link to the Discord in the description of the video so that you can join, and then that's where I'll be doing polls on which champion guides based on the kind of champions that I have that I'll be doing next, so that my community can decide what they want to see more information on. But until then, guys, I will catch you in the next video.